We're on to our next part of the project, our doghouse. We're going to be putting a glitter floor in here. And to prep the floor, this is going to be, this is a plywood floor. And it was built in 4-foot sections. That's how the little cottage company does that. So we've got lots of cracks, okay? And cracks and epoxy floors don't mix. The epoxy will settle into the cracks and you'll lose tons of material. If you have knot holes that go all the way through, it'll just pour right on through. Makes for a thinner floor, makes for a mess. So it's really important to prep your floor. So the first thing you want to do is vacuum, either using a household vac, like I have here, or getting your handy dandy shop vac out. I like to use this particular one because it has an attachment that has a very fine tip and it allows me to really get into the cracks and pull all that junk out of there, which is super important. Once you've cleaned it, you can kind of assess the situation, see if there's knots, see if there's little chips or splinters that need to come off. You can really look at the cracks in the floor, really assess the situation. So I always recommend starting with a good cleaning. You'll do another cleaning before you go on to the paint step, but this is an important step just to see, you know, what you got going on with your floor. I'm going to come down close so that you can see what I'm holding in my hand. There's lots of things that you can do to fill holes. You know, everyone's got their favorite. Believe it or not, mine is Bondo. Okay, this is what people are using to fill the body work on their cars. Now, I have two reasons for liking Bondo. One, when I was in college and working at the entertainment industry, we used it all the time, and we used it for two reasons. One, it's hard as a rock. Two, it's carvable, which means you can go in there and, you know, actually put grooves and carve into it. And three, it's fast. And in the entertainment industry, you generally don't have a lot of time. You need to get it in there and get it dried quick so that you can get on to the next step. So I developed my love of Bondo through the entertainment industry, but I have continued to have my love of Bondo because I am a professional metal worker and I like Bondo working with metals. So I come at it from a love from a lot of different directions. It works great. You can fill large gaps. I filled really large gaps sometimes just by building up and letting it dry, building up, letting it dry, building up. So if you have a large knot hole in your floor that goes all the way through, never fear, Bondo will come to your rescue. Just work it around the edges, let it dry, work another layer, fill that puppy up, okay? It's really, really strong and I highly recommend it. It feathers nicely, it sands great. There is a drawback, there always is, right? It's toxic as heck. Yeah, it's really nasty, mind-killing nasty. We're in a very small space here. It's an 8x12 doghouse. Yeah, you could get really sick. So, respirators on. It is the drawback. Highly recommend wearing gloves. It's just nasty, but boy, it's really effective. So pull out the Bondo if you want to, you know, get the party rolling. I'm going to go ahead and show you the cracks that we have going on over here so that you can see what kind of filling we're going to be doing today. Okay, so here's my dirty floor. I haven't vacuumed it yet, but I wanted you to see these are the kinds of cracks we're dealing with, okay? It's a good full 1/8 inch. That Bondo will have no trouble with it. See how there's a splinter right there? Yep, that's something you want to get out of there. Just pull that puppy out. Take it back to the base, wherever it started. So you definitely want to work your way through the edges. You don't want anything loose. It's better to have Bondo than to have splinters in there. Okay, another thing to keep in mind. Here's a floor to wall crack right here. The epoxy will find its way under there. It's nasty. So you have a couple choices. One, you can Bondo, which is kind of a pain. Or two, you can run a little bead of caulking in there, just a tiny little one in there. Or you can even do any sort of putty. You could do even that cheap white wall putty or fix-all or anything. Just get something in there so that when you throw your epoxy on, it doesn't find its way under here and you'll lose tons of material. You don't want to do that. Okay, so those are the things to look for. I'm gonna go ahead and run a vacuum over it. You can see it's filthy, all kinds of construction dirt, and then we're gonna start bondoing. Okay, I'm right here at a 4-way joint where 4x4 pieces are coming together, and this nail was raised, so I went ahead and smacked that puppy down with my good old trusty Estwing hammer. But in looking at it closely, I don't know if you can tell, but right here, not only is there space that we're going to have to fill, but this is about a 1/16 of an inch lower than this. Same thing here. So this is flush, but from here to here, there's a 16-inch climb. So not only is the Bondo going to have to fill, but we're going to have to feather, so that we don't have one dramatic shift in height, okay? So here, we're good, totally flush. But right here, it just dips down just a teeny bit, and then we're flush again. So there's this spot right here that's gonna require some feathering, and that's where Bondo really shines. It's really, really strong, and once you get it in there, it's gonna last a long time. So keep that in mind. You wanna make sure you have a nice flat floor, and with plywood, you can either sand this down, or you can build this up. And in this case, I'm gonna go ahead for the build up. Okay, so another thing, you might hear in the background, I've got this little heater running. This doorstep right here got a little bit of water in the last storm, and you do not want to seal over a wet floor. So it's very important that this doorstep right here is completely dry before you go and do, well, any Bondo work for certain, but certainly before you put paint down, before you put glitter down, and before you put a flood coat of epoxy down, okay? So these little space heaters left on overnight at an angle so that it's, you know, pointing down on the spot should do the trick. But definitely, you know, check your floor out completely to make sure you're really good to roll, because there's nothing worse than having a floor fail on you in one spot. There's basically no way to just go and spot fix an epoxy floor easily, okay? Hey, so we're getting ready to actually do the flood coat of epoxy on the glitter floor, and I've gone ahead and got my bucket. I've got my part 1 and part 2 epoxy. It's a 2-to-1, so I'll be doing half of this and the full amount of this. I'm going to be mixing it with the squirrel cage here. And I've got it in this bucket because it's obviously more than a gallon, and it's got this handy dandy handle on it, so when I go to pour, you know, it's easy to grip onto. You wouldn't want to get yourself some sort of tiny little bucket and have to maneuver your way around the floor. My floor in there is 8x12, so I'm going to have more than I need, but that's the way I like to roll. It's better than stopping midway and mixing another batch, because if you run out and then you do your next batch, you can sometimes get a seam line for when it's starting to cure and dry. And I don't like that. I'd rather throw away a little product than go ahead and have a seam line. So I'm going to go ahead and mix enough for almost 1.5 times the amount. Okay, I've got my material mixed. I've got my squeegee. I'm going to be pouring it out, squeegeeing as flat as I can. See how it goes. Okay, so yesterday we did our first pour on the floor. We used just the gold mica, and today we have a second pour going on, and it's going to be the gold mica with the Midas Touch holographic. So the reason we did that was because we found that the wall color and the floor color were just too similar, and we wanted something that was a little bit different. So we figured the holographic would give us that different. So we've gone ahead and cleaned the floor very carefully, and we're going to do our second pour. So here we go.